The day we moved into Maple Creek, I knew trouble was brewing before I even unloaded the first box. The neighborhood looked like something out of a picture-perfect suburban magazine. Lush green lawns cut with military precision, driveways lined with SUVs and minivans, kids riding their bikes in neat little packs, and the ever-present watchful eyes peeking through living room blinds. It didn't take long to figure out that this was a place where the HOA ran everything, or at least, they thought they did. The moving truck had barely rumbled out of the driveway when my neighbor across the street, a man in his late 50s wearing khaki shorts and a visor, wandered over to welcome me. "You must be the new guy," he said with a forced smile, his gaze darting to the house and then to my truck like he was taking inventory. "Yeah," I said, shaking his hand. "Name's Daniel. Just got in from the city. Looking forward to some quiet." His smile twitched. "Quiet's good, but, just a heads up, Karen will be over soon. She likes to meet all the newcomers. She, runs the HOA." "Runs the HOA," I repeated, more as a statement than a question. He gave a little nod, almost apologetic, before backing away like he didn't want to be seen talking to me. 2 hours later, I was in the garage unpacking tools when I heard it, a sharp, authoritative knock on the front door, loud enough to rattle the frame. Bang, bang, bang. I took my time walking to the door, but the pounding didn't stop. When I opened it, there she was, the infamous Karen. Late 50s, platinum blonde bob so stiff it looked like it could deflect bullets, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and, naturally, a clipboard tucked under her arm like a badge of power. She scanned me up and down like she was sizing me up for an interrogation. "You're the new owner," she said. Not a question, a declaration. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Well," she sniffed, stepping forward like she owned the place, "you need to fill out these forms to register with the HOA. Dues are $300 a month, payable by the 5th, and there's a list of regulations you'll need to memorize: lawn height, paint colors, what vehicles are allowed, trash can placement, and so forth. Oh, and we'll need copies of your driver's license and deed for our records." I stared at her for a long moment, then leaned against the doorframe. "Yeah, I'm not doing any of that." Her painted eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "Excuse me, you heard me," I said calmly. "This property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. I checked the deed, the covenants, the county records. This house was grandfathered in long before the HOA existed. You don't have authority here." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then the scowl came, sharp and mean. "Everyone follows the rules in this community," she snapped. "You don't get special treatment just because you think you're smarter than the rest of us. That truck," she pointed at my black F-150 parked in the driveway, "will need to be approved. And that shed in the backyard. It'll need to come down. Doesn't meet code." I crossed my arms. "Yeah, that's not happening. This is my house, my property. You don't make the rules here." For a second, I thought she might explode right there on my porch. Her face turned the color of a ripe tomato as she jabbed her finger toward me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Nobody ignores the HOA." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed off down the walkway, her heels clicking like gunshots against the concrete. I shook my head, muttering under my breath as I shut the door. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Daniel. .. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But less than 10 minutes later, I noticed the telltale flash of red and blue lights reflecting through the blinds. Curious, I peeked out the window, and sure enough, 2 patrol cars had pulled up in front of my house. And there was Karen, standing at the end of my driveway, gesturing wildly like she was giving a TED talk on how to handle dangerous criminals. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered, grabbing my wallet before stepping outside. The younger of the 2 officers approached cautiously. "Sir," he said politely, "we got a call about a possible trespasser. Can we see some ID?" I nodded, pulling out my driver's license. "Sure, but you might want to check with dispatch before doing anything rash. My name's Daniel Carter. This is my house. Deed's in my name." Behind him, Karen was practically vibrating with indignation. "He's lying," she screeched. "He moved in without registering, refused to show me documentation, and he's been lurking around the property like a squatter. I demand you remove him immediately." The older officer shot her a look that said he'd heard this kind of nonsense before but stayed quiet as his partner radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We're at Maple Creek, 4829 Cedar Lane. Need confirmation on a Daniel Carter. Repeat, Daniel Carter. Resident status check." There was a pause, then static, and then, the sweet, sweet sound of my wife's voice crackling over the radio. "Copy that, Unit 12, she said, her tone cool but sharp with amusement. "That's my husband. He owns that property outright. Officers, please remind Ms. Karen that filing a false emergency report is a crime." The younger cop froze mid-step, glancing at me with wide eyes. The older one muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh before turning to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, his voice suddenly much firmer, "this man is the legal owner of this home. You have no right to trespass or to make false reports. This is your warning, do not call 911 for personal disputes again." Karen's jaw worked up and down, but no words came out. She looked like someone had unplugged her programming. But, no buts, the officer said sharply. "Go home, ma'am." She huffed, spun on her heel, and marched back down the street, muttering under her breath about lawyers and violations, her heels clacking against the asphalt as the neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, phones recording every second of her humiliation. I turned to the officers, suppressing a grin. "Thanks for stopping by, gentlemen. You want a cold drink before you head out?" The younger one chuckled. "Nah, but tell your wife dispatch says hi." That was something. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing like a hornet's nest someone had kicked. I was sipping my coffee on the porch when I noticed the first wave of stares. Curtains rustled, blinds shifted, and phones subtly aimed in my direction. I knew exactly why, because nothing spreads faster in a small, HOA-controlled neighborhood than a scandal, and last night's radio call had apparently been broadcast loud and clear across Maple Creek. By the time I walked down the driveway to grab the morning paper, my next-door neighbor, a wiry man named Mike, ambled over with a grin plastered across his face. Well, Mike said, trying and failing to hold back a laugh. "I heard dispatch last night. The whole county did. You should have seen the look on Karen's face when the cops shut her down." I smirked. "Yeah, I got a front row seat. Guess she wasn't expecting my wife to be on the other end of that radio." Mike chuckled and shook his head. "Man, you don't know how long we've been waiting for someone to stand up to her. She runs this place like it's her personal kingdom. Fines people for leaving their trash cans out 5 minutes too long, yells at kids for riding scooters on the sidewalk. Last month, she threatened to have someone's garden gnome confiscated because it wasn't on the approved decor list." I nearly spit out my coffee. "A garden gnome? Seriously?" "Dead serious," he said. "And now, she's the neighborhood joke." Across the street, a woman watering her flowers waved at me with a smile so wide it could have lit the block. "Morning, Daniel," she called. "Love the way you handled her." "About time someone did." I raised my coffee cup in acknowledgement, a half-smile tugging at my lips. "Just standing my ground. .. By noon, it was clear Karen wasn't taking her public humiliation well. I was in the garage polishing my truck when I heard the sharp clack of heels on the pavement. Sure enough, there she was, storming up the driveway like a Category 5 hurricane in a floral blouse. "You think you're funny, don't you?" she snapped, her face still blotchy from what I could only assume was a long night of stewing in her own rage. I leaned against the hood of my truck, arms folded, and met her glare with a calm smile. "Not particularly, but I do find it amusing that you called the cops on a homeowner for standing in his own house." Her nostrils flared. "You embarrassed me. Do you have any idea how that looked? Me, standing there, being lectured like some criminal while half the neighborhood filmed it." "Oh, I have an idea," I said dryly. "Pretty sure I saw at least 3 cameras pointed at you. Might want to check TikTok later." Her cheeks flushed crimson. "This isn't over, Carter," she hissed. "I will be speaking with the board about your behavior. And when they vote, you'll be forced to comply with our regulations." I chuckled, low and slow, the sound clearly getting under her skin. "Karen, I'll say this one last time, my property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. You can have as many meetings as you want, vote all you want, write as many letters as you want. It won't change the deed, and it won't change the fact that you have zero authority here." She opened her mouth, ready to fire back, when the familiar sound of my wife's Jeep pulling into the driveway cut her off. Sarah stepped out, her dispatcher uniform still on, badge clipped to her belt, and an amused grin on her face. "Karen," she said sweetly, "what a surprise. Causing trouble again." Karen froze. Completely froze. It was almost funny how fast the bravado drained out of her. I was just checking on a misunderstanding," she stammered, suddenly finding the cracks in the pavement very interesting. Sarah tilted her head, her smile never wavering. "Well, consider it checked. And maybe next time, don't misuse emergency services. False reports tie up resources we could be using to help people who actually need it." I swear, if looks could kill, Sarah's calm, professional tone would have buried Karen 6 feet under. Without another word, Karen spun on her heel and stormed back down the driveway, her heels clacking like war drums. Sarah turned to me, shaking her head. "I swear, I've dealt with drunks, high-speed chases, and bar fights, but HOA Karens. They're in a league of their own." "Tell me about it," I muttered, grinning as I kissed her cheek. But watching her face when she realized you were the dispatcher. Worth every second. Over the next week, the neighborhood transformed. Where people had once-eyed me with suspicion, they now waved as I drove by. Kids riding scooters stopped to admire my truck. Neighbors came by with homemade pies and friendly chatter, grateful someone had finally put Karen in her place. One evening, as I grilled steaks on the back patio, Mike stopped by again, beer in hand. "You know," he said, leaning against the fence, "you might have just saved this neighborhood. She's been bullying everyone for years. Now, she won't even look most folks in the eye." I laughed. Guess all it took was a little reality check. Mike smirked. "Reality check, buddy, that was a reality smackdown. And let me tell you, the video of her getting called out by dispatch. It's got over 10,000 views already. My wife said someone put it to music. I almost dropped the tongs." "Music? Oh yeah," Mike said with a grin. "Some teenager added a drumbeat and a voiceover. It's hilarious. I'll send you the link. By the end of the month, Karen was a ghost. She'd stopped patrolling the neighborhood like an HOA cop and barely left her house except to check the mail. Rumor had it she'd even resigned from the HOA board after being threatened with a fine for misuse of emergency services. And me, I got to enjoy my new home in peace, knowing that every time Sarah's voice crackled over the radio at dispatch, every officer in the county remembered the night the neighborhood tyrant got humbled, live, on the air. Sometimes, poetic justice doesn't just knock. It calls over the radio for everyone to hear.